Hi, everybody. So glad to have everyone here on a Friday and Saturday day today. And I'm happy to have the author join us this evening. I'm just going to pull up my notes real quick that I have of the book. And that I made for our author. One second. I'm so sorry. Um, oh, I can't believe I am like this right now. Normally, I have this all put together.
It's okay, Pauline.
I'm so sorry. I had it all out here and it's okay, it's right here. I'm so sorry. I really did have all this stuff prepared and I have no idea where it went on my laptop. But without further ado, I want to introduce you all to Des Spicer Orak. Did I say it right? Please forgive me if I did not. Our poet is a queer mixed Palauan poet born and raised in Portland, Oregon, a BSW graduate, author, activist, and organizer. Des has come to understand herself and her culture through her relationship to the land and ocean. Their strong passion for learning and teaching involved them in many positions centered around building community resilience and healing. Des believes in the power of knowledge and its ability to transform our impact on both each other and the earth. In her work, Des intentionally amplifies the voices of her people and their struggles. Without recognition and action, several smaller Pacifica communities will continue to suffer silently in the development of climate crises. Outside of Apano, Des can be found organizing with Pacific Climate Warriors, PDX, a local Pacifica youth climate chapter, attending and performing at local open mic events, or exploring hikes and trails with their dog, Bella. Des's pronouns are she and they. And so welcome to the space, Des. Please, would you mind just sharing anything that I may have left out or missed from a bio that I found of you online that I've been secretly stalking you? And then we'll continue on with questions after you've had the time to just introduce yourself more formally.
Yeah, of course. Aliyah, Des, I use she, they pronouns. As you said, I'm from Portland, Oregon. I was born and raised here, which is good and bad, both in the same. Yes, Bella, my sweet little baby, as you mentioned, is the light of my life, my dog. She's actually, Bella, come here. She's in a sweater, which I think is important to share. It's her fall attire and it has a hood, which brings me immense joy. This is my sweet angel. She's very loving and kind and a very emotional dog. And I'm a very emotional person, so I think that we're very compatible in that way. Yeah, wow, you about covered. I mean, definitely there's a lot more to me than just what my bios read, but I'm so grateful to be in this space. And I would also like to take a second to get to know y'all a little bit, like your names, your pronouns, what brings you here, where your interests lay, like we're in community together, and I think that's really important. And I don't want to just talk at you the whole time. So yeah, I would really like to get to know you. And can I popcorn to somebody? Is that okay? Okay, cool. I'm gonna pass over to Kiana.
Hi everyone, I'm Kiana. My pronouns are she, her, and I am in this space as both a reader and writer. I don't write poetry, I write short fiction and creative essays, but I'm a fan of poetry. It's a beautiful form, and so I'm really excited to be here today and to hear from you, Des, and to hear everybody's experience as they were reading Interim.
Perfect. And if you could pass, if we could just like do that system, that would be
I'm
wonderful.
gonna popcorn, sorry, I forgot we were doing that. I'm gonna popcorn over to Eddie.
Thank you, Kiana. So this is my first meeting with this group. I'm very excited to be here in this space with y'all. My name is Edward, but I prefer Eddie. I use he, they pronouns, and I also write as well as read. I loved Interim. I thought there were so many topics that were discussed on like queer identity as well as how you went about going in respects to other queer identities. And I'd love to talk about it, or I'm excited to talk about it. I don't necessarily write short stories, but I write poetry, and yeah, I think I will pass it to Pele.
Thank you, Eddie. And I just wanted to say, when you pulled your hair out, I was like, oh, I was like, that's cute. Sorry, getting off topic. My name is Pele Bennett. I am Polynesian, I'm Samoan and Tokelauan. And I've been following Pauline for a while and with her other work. And so when she put this out, I was really excited because I am definitely a book snob and I'm also a Polynesian book snob. So I am a hoarder of them. So anywhere I can find any poly authors, I have started like collecting a library, which I'll have to show everyone one day and share a photo of it at least. But I was really excited and interested to see all the authors you're bringing. And this is my second time being in Zoom. And the first time was with your book also, which I'm loving as well. So thank you for putting your work out also. And I'm a reader writer. I also do flash fiction, starting a little poetry. I'm like, baby steps, just exploring that whole realm. And yeah, just building my own narrative, and whatever that looks like, one day it'll be out there, who knows, but I'm excited to be here, so thank you. And I will pass it over to, my eyes are bad, Lilika. Did I say your name? I'm so sorry. How do you say your name?
Yes, it's Lilika.
Lilika. Okay.
Lilika Imoana. Thank you, Pele. Hi, everyone. Malo Lele. My name is Lilika. My pronouns are she, her. I'm Tongan. My family is from Homa and Ha'ateho, but I was born and raised in Hawaii, in Laie, on the North Shore. And then after graduating at UH, my husband and I moved over here and we live in Osaka, Japan. So we're here and we have 2 kids. So sorry for the baby noises in the back, but I'm here because I've just been a part of this reading virtual book club space since last year. And I've just really appreciated the Pasifika artists or authors that we've discussed. And I really love the short poetry books. These are my favorite. So Interim, I really enjoyed. Okay, I'm gonna stop now because my baby wants to talk, and I'm gonna pass it over to Mara if you are able to, if you are able to talk or introduce yourself.
Hi, sorry, how's my sound? Is my sound okay?
It's good, Mara.
Okay, sorry, I'm in the middle of getting tattooed. What was the question?
Mara, what tattoo are you getting? And just introducing yourself and your pronouns.
Okay, hi everyone, my name is Marla, my pronouns are she, her. I'm in the middle of getting a Fijian tapa print on my right lower ankle. And I'm in this space because I just think that our people have so much to offer. I love all of the our scholars. We come from I guess such a poetic and oral, like culturally strong people. And I just love this space that we can like discuss all of that. Thank you. And I'll popcorn it over to who hasn't gone?
Lysiate is driving, and I think I'm the last one. So I'll just
Okay, over to you, Pauline.
introduce myself. Hi, everybody. I'm Pauline. I have been with the space since the beginning, and it's a beautiful thing to see like how the space has evolved and like the intentionality that has come behind more recently of trying to promote more peoples within our ocean of that focus on Melanesia and Micronesia, as well as underrepresented voices that we haven't seen due to colonization, which we're gonna get into because Des' poems speak to all the issues of why we don't get to hear from, voices that deserve space. And so it was such a beautiful thing to bring in a queer Pasifika woman, Palauan woman to come in and just hear your words, your thoughts. They spoke to so many important things that so many of us knew there were issues about, but you put words to our thoughts and really have secured a space for our queer Pasifika people. And so is there any other questions you have, Des? Or do we get to ask you some questions now? Like,
Yeah, absolutely to both. I mean, I thank you for having me here and also just for creating the space. I think there is definitely a discrepancy in Pacifica, like representation in terms of like us networking together, especially out here in like Portland. Growing up here, there was nothing. There was nothing. There was nobody, no organizing, no like all I had was my family, and so I think it's been really beautiful to release this book and release this work and allow my words to touch people in ways that I have no control over, that I threw it out into the world and I was like, if this reaches who it's supposed to, then it will. And if it doesn't, then I think at the heart of it, like I did it for me. I did it for me and my people, and like the truth in my words and the liberation within myself. And I think that when you move throughout the world with those truths, like that reaches people without trying to. So yeah, feel free to ask questions. I can also talk a little bit about the book as a collective and explain sort of the intention that went into it. And then I'll open room for questions. Does that feel okay? Lovely. Yeah. Interim. I have my copy here to like reference, because even authors sometimes need like to reference their own work, because sometimes I write it and then it's just out the brain. Interim. Yeah, Interim is a small collection of poems that tells a really heavy story. And it tells stories of climate crises and grief and devastation and queer identity and religion and like all of the intersections through the lens of relationships, and whether it's like my relationship to the land, my relationship to my people, to the ocean, to my queerness, to my identity, to like growing up in Portland, to all of it, all of the relationships that I've had the privilege to have in my lifetime. I think this is a compilation of all of those things and all of the extremities that they hold at the same time. So the good and the bad, which can get really heavy. So yeah, I think personally, this book was very healing to release. I have been writing since I was young. Young being like, I remember being in third grade and I was like there with my little notebook, like ferociously writing in the corner. I was like trying to get all my thoughts down. And it was really, really, really poor poetry at that point. Like it's on my Tumblr archives. And I looked back at one point and it was just embarrassing. I was like, if anybody saw this today, they would totally discredit me as an author. But I think that's a part of the process. And therefore I love my child self, I'm grateful for that growth period, and also grateful that it never made it past Tumblr, because I think that that's important. Yeah, I've been writing for a really long time, and writing for me is more so an emotional outlet. It's how I process, it's how I hold the weight of the way that I feel things. I don't know if y'all are into astrology, but I dabble occasionally, quite often. And I think that it's helped me to understand my relationships to people and understand myself a little bit better. It's like a language to really put words to the way that I feel the world. And not that it's like prescriptive in any way. I don't think that like your sign like dictates who you are and how you move throughout the world at all points in time, but it definitely gives like an outlook and more a general outline to like engaging with people. So I think yeah, poetry gives me access to a lot of depth that I feel, and a lot of like complicated intersections that are really hard to place into words. And at the same time, it allows me to hide still. So this is very vulnerable, actually. Speaking about poetry, I think poetry is really beautiful in that you can be as explicit or elusive as you want to be. And I'll get there. Yes, you will know. I would like to know what you think, actually. Like, what do I feel like? I feel like that's important. You know, like, what do I give? What was I saying? Oh, poetry, yes. You can hide if you want to, and you don't have to be explicit, or you can be. And there's a lot of opportunity that lies in poetry, and poetry is like the language of our people. It's spoken word, it's storytelling, it's, you know, passing down tradition and like intention orally. And I think in navigating capitalism and colonization, as you mentioned before, it's really important to find those outlets that connect you close to home, especially being a part of diaspora. Out here in the United States, it feels so lonely. And there's a really unique loneliness that I think my poetry names, and it's in more way than just being diasporic. I am an earth sign. That's very good. You're onto something. Yes, that is my little spiel about my book. I'm a Taurus. Oh, I love the cheers. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I never get anybody's signs right, but that one, I was like, she has to be a Taurus. I just feel she's a Taurus. And lo and behold, when you said that, that like made my whole night. Makes me feel like I can do anything now that I guessed your sign. Before I open up the space for um, do the questions that I had formulated, I wanted to turn some time over to Eddie. I know you said you had questions about the book, and I just want to give you this opportunity to take, you know, the time first and ask your question, and let's work through those questions that you may have, and then we can move on forward. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to, or you have an additional comment that you want to add in, just put your hand up or put your name in the chat, and I'll be sure to call on you right after.
Thank you so much, Pauline. First off, I want to say Sainam Asi to Kiana for inviting me. First of all, it's just a great opportunity, and I'm really appreciative. I also greatly appreciate, because I do have to head out at 12:30. I wanted to talk about the intentions behind leaving the blank spaces, where it would be the name of the person you're reaching out to. I found that to be so specific to like queer identity, because of the fact that like I work with other queer poets, and I also like had pieces where I left the name out intentionally. And for me, that was in a sense for the possibility or the potential that these people that I'm mentioning out could have transitioned. And the intention is that the avoidance of dead naming. And I wanted to ask you, like, what was your intention behind leaving the blank spaces? Thank you.
Yes, what a wonderful question that only a fellow poet would ask. Yeah, thank you for noticing that. There are so many, wow, yes, there are so many spaces in this book that I leave names absent in for a lot of reasons. I think, well, the eulogy, because confidentiality. because it was definitely like a patient of mine and I couldn't just disclose this person's identity without a legal lawsuit. So that is in the eulogy. And in the other poems, so I think 2017, 18, and 19 titles, all three of those, I intentionally leave out names because they're interchangeable. And as much as like the line was talking about a specific person, I think insert any name in there of a relationship that I've had, and it makes sense to me. Like the nature of the relationship of the line and the nature of my relationship to any given person that I've shared like intimacy with or love with, or like any of the other like ways that you can be in relationship to people. I think yeah, you could substitute anything in there, and even your own. You know, I think that it's an opportunity also for the reader to really look at what the poem is saying as opposed to what it means to me, and like read it and apply it to yourself. So insert your own like name in there, insert somebody else's name in there, and how does it change the tone of the poem? That's something I tried before I put the book together and like sent it out into the world. I tried to put several different names into the slots, and just to assess if it changed anything, if it was like an intentional choice to leave it a space where a name should be. And I think that speaks a lot. It speaks a lot to have an absence of something. And I think that, get out of the garbage. I'm sorry, she loves paper towels and then she throws up. So go, do not get in the garbage. Apologies. Yes, there's a lot of intention there. And I think sometimes the absence of a word or a name speaks a lot louder than if I was to list a person. And there are certain people that I've written about in this book that I don't think deserve the gratification of knowing that there's a poem about them in a book, you know, like there's shitty people that are written into my story, have written themselves into my story rather. And I don't feel right nor liberated by giving them that power. Yeah, so that was a very intentional choice. And thank you so much for the question. And I'm so bummed that you have to leave, but thank you so much for being here. Also, where are you located? Because you said 12:30 and I was like, baby, it's 7:30.
Oh, shoot. I'm here in Guahan, and I do have to go like right now. And I really appreciate everyone, and I hope to see everyone within the following meetings. Okay, adios. See everyone. Bye. Thank you, Kiana. Bye, everyone.
Edward. Thank you for
Thank you all.
coming.
Hi, Eddie. Adios.
Adios.
Awesome. Okay, so one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, can you share any thoughts about the popularity of poetry online currently? And what are your thoughts when you see, you know, your work being shared online?
What a question. Yes, I have lots of thoughts about the boom of the internet and how it is transformed poetry in both good and bad ways. I think in my Tumblr days, I very much subscribe to like the Instagram poet-esque type style, because I was learning and because I thought that was what was cool. And then I started to realize that like the depth of poetry is often just that, like it's deep, it's very personal, like there is a depth to poetry and it can't be emulated, and it can't be emulated like through anything but honesty. And so I think my relationship to, wow, that's such a good question. I think about this so often, and now that I'm here, I feel like I'm thrown by it, because I never want to denounce somebody's like poetic nature. You know, I would never like look at something and say like, oh, that's not poetry, because like if it's poetry to you, then absolutely it's poetry. And who am I to then dictate that, right? But I think as a poet, as a poet in the world, there are instances and cases in which I'm like, and it's mostly white people. It's mostly white people. I will add that. I think that there's like a certain cultural element to poetry, and like I've read a lot of like frankly like bullshit. Sorry for my language. Oh, sorry, children. But that's my truth. Bullshit white poetry that I'm just like lacks like the depth and flavor. I think that a lot of poets of color have like really innate access to and really intimate relationship to, because like it's in our history, it's in our lineage. And I think specifically the internet has given a lot of access to my people and to all people to like really dive into poetry, whether it's like viewing spoken word on YouTube or like buying somebody's book or following them on Instagram because they do poetry. And it is also given a lot of opportunity for co-opting and yeah, and turning anything into poetry. And I don't think that it's really hard to like draw boundaries around because poetry doesn't have finite rules about it. You can write anything and call it a poem. That is like the nature of poetry, is like it is a poem if it's a poem to you. Yeah, so I don't know if I don't know if that answered your question. That's how I feel about it, is I don't think that I have say over what or who indulges in poetry or even like creates poetry, but I do think that certain poetry is felt differently, and you can always tell. Like personally, for example, I don't really mess with like Rupi Kaur for several reasons, mostly because she stole from Black women. But I mean, honestly, that's the heart of it, is like it's a big thievery. Like it's just one big thievery, and that I don't stand for that. I don't believe in that. I think, yeah, I draw hard boundaries dependent on the situation with the internet and how it like interacts with poetry. So I'm both grateful and like irritated by it.
I feel like we need like a coffee hour or a tea hour, because I'm an Aquarius, so I get sucked in really deep when it comes to tea like that. And I got lost in the Rupi Kaur stealing of Black women poetry. And I was like, what am I doing? It's 2 a.m. in the morning and I'm looking at all this information. I was just so shocked. But I was shocked, but not shocked. I was shocked that I stayed up that late, but not shocked that she had done that. That's a discussion for another time. Let me like refocus back to the main topic, not Rupi Kaur, but an even better author. Okay, so Des, I wanted to ask you, what is it like to come across people's thoughts and feelings on your work? Do their opinions or feedback impact your writing?
Another really wonderful question. I think in releasing this book, I was very intentional about about my intentions. And yeah, I don't really let people have that power over my art, which I think is a very beautiful life skill that I've learned and developed, because I used to be very enthralled with like, oh, if somebody doesn't like it, then it like, ruins my whole day and I should just take it out of the earth. And that's not true. I think that in releasing this, hearing feedback is probably one of the wild, like I still sometimes like struggle to say that I have a book and to like own it and be like, yeah, I'm an author, because I am, and I get to own that, but it feels boastful. I think I'm a very humble person. I would like to think that I'm a very humble person. Vet me, please, correct me. Like I'm all down for accountability. And if you need to let me know that I'm not humble, let me know. But I would like to think that I live humbly. And in that, it means that I view my work as something subjective, both to myself and to other people. So when people come to me with feedback, usually it's positive, which is super sweet, but I want to know, like, if there's something that you're like, Des, why would you, like, what does that even mean? Like, I would like to know that. I would like to engage in dialogue around things that are going to help me grow as an artist and as an author. And I'm always taken aback by the compliments and the flowers and all of the like beautiful, wondrous, like praise in a way that comes with this, because like, quite frankly, these are my innermost like emotional secrets. Like this like the timeline of my existence and the depth of it. And so to hear feedback about that vulnerability is strange. I don't know how I feel about it. It's different every time. Sometimes I'm in the place to be like, yeah, we can talk about it. And other times I'm like, whoa, I did not consent to you talking to me about my emotional, like my story right now. Like there's definitely boundaries that I have to draw sometimes around people and the way that they engage with my work. seeing it posted blows my mind. I'm a very private person. Even on social media, I don't really enjoy like posting things. I archive most things that I post because I'm like, don't know if I really want to be known like that. So I think stepping into like authorhood was a really big opportunity for me to actually let myself be seen and let myself be known, and be held like tenderly by people who want to engage and even relate to like the things that I write about. It's a really big practice of vulnerability, and it's still scary. And I think it might always be scary, even if I'm working on another book, but even if I like release that, I'm still going to feel the same fear and same gratitude that I feel now when I'm approached about my work. It's very affirming and horrifying, all in one beautiful like package, which I think it's the most wonderful thing that I've ever experienced, actually, to reach people in ways that I have no control over, and also to be honest with myself about honesty with other people. Yeah, it's very vulnerable, very tender, very raw, and it also allows me to look at myself objectively. I think that I get to view my work when other people post it through their eyes, which I think is like such a beautiful thing. And it's interesting to me, like the different poems that people cling to and like what stands out for you, like what hits you differently, because every poem in this book is tender to me. And so like I have a relationship to all of it, but it's very beautiful and fascinating to hear where people resonate and where their heartstrings were pulled in their journey reading it.
Very nice. I just want to check the room, see if anybody would like to jump in, add any follow-up questions. If not, I've got some more questions that have been sent to me. One of the questions, if no one else, okay. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Bella.
I'm like, I don't know how many questions you have. I'm like, maybe I should get in there before you start rolling. I have a question because more of the process, because in any project you do, it's so exciting and the goal is to get that finished result, the end result. But the process is something many people love, and I personally love the process of doing anything. That like is what brings joy, and that's what the challenge is, and everything comes with it. So I wanted to ask more of an advice tip. Do you have any tips on writing, like something that maybe it's a certain prompt or something that's a writing exercise, or something you have a tip on a certain pen? Like, I don't know, maybe it's something, simple or crazy, or it's not. Just for me, like I'm dabbling in poetry, but just in writing in general, I feel like it's a never ending learning cycle. So if you have any advice.
Yes, definitely. I love this question. I do think that everybody's writing style is unique and different, and whatever feels right for you is the way to go. And I do have tips. Pens, I use one kind of pen. And I don't know what it is about it, but like these Pilot pens, they put something in here, because I have like 35, and whenever I write anything, it's always these Pilot pens. And I think it's because they're smooth, some pens, like when you write with them, they stop the writing. That is the most frustrating thing to me. Like I need something that's going to like flow and keep up with like the chaos of my brain as I'm writing. Pilot pens. But serious feedback, journal. I think that journaling has been something that through time I've had a complicated relationship to, because I used to be like a person who journaled when I was upset, and only when I was upset. And so I would have these like consistent logs of just really traumatic, like emotionally heavy things. And I think in releasing my book, I learned that I need to write when things are good. And I should be writing all the time. Like I should write when I feel like it. I should write when I go out to brunch with myself. Like take yourself on dates. That's also like just life advice, but more like that as a writer. Like you need to take yourself out to experience the world in a way that isn't filtered by other people. So like, for example, tonight I took myself out and had dinner and a drink, and I was like, wow, this is really nice. And I watched this like I watched this couple just be cute and queer and in love and like have their whole little dinner. And then this person like opened the door for the other person. I was like, wow, like how chivalrous. And I think that seeing other people exist is very inspiring also. But at that dinner, I was writing to myself. And I think through journaling, you practice taking what's in your brain and putting it onto a page. And really accessing like specific language and diction that says what you want to say. Like you build your vocabulary by practicing talking to yourself and even out loud. Like I'll talk to myself out loud around the house, and that might not be a good thing, but sometimes like you need to. Like I have to hear my own voice in order to then hear my voice through a piece of writing. As I am writing in the process, I write very sporadically. So I write when I feel, which makes it hard because then there's like expectations after you release a book that's like, oh, when is your next thing coming out? Or like, when will you have enough material to like release a book? And I think a really beautiful thing about my first book is that I didn't really intend for it to be a book. I had these poems just separately, just existing in Google, actually, in my Google Drive. And I looked at them and I was like, wow, there's a whole collection here. And I never wrote them with the intention of writing a book, which was a very beautiful gift. When I like realized that it was a whole project, I was like, you did that without even trying. That's wonderful. But I think some of the greatest gifts that we have often come to us like when we don't realize that they're happening. So journal and see what comes to you and talk to yourself and really lean into like what your body and your mind tell you. And yeah, you build dialogue that way. And having dialogue with yourself, I think, is one of the strongest ways to be a writer, is to know yourself extremely well, because then your work reflects who you are. And if you like yourself, that's a huge plus. You know, then your work is just this like wondrous reflection of you, in good and bad ways too. Like this book is heavy. It's very heavy. And I knew that releasing it. And I think, yeah, my writing process is very messy. And when I start writing a poem, I have to finish it in the same sitting. So I actually rarely, if ever, like come back to things. I mean, I'll come back and like change words around, but I have to sit down and release all of the like emotions and the thoughts and the words and feelings that come to me, and then maybe go back later and like edit a few things. But for the most part, it's a very like stream of consciousness type writing, and it feels most authentic. And I think sometimes after I let like a feeling or a moment go, then I can't access it again. So I don't think that I could write any of these poems over again, because they all were very specific moments that I was really aligned with myself, and you need to listen to that. So I would suggest carrying around like some sort of like pocket notebook or like the notes app on your phone, whatever you feel. I like physically writing because it connects me to my body more. But if it works for you, whip out your phone and write down like a thought that you have, because we have amazing thoughts that just like go so often, like they come and go so quickly. And so I think the ability to capture them and then turn them into a work of, or a piece, or like an art form, is a very unique and beautiful skill to have. So yeah, there are definitely ways to tune it in. I hope that answers your question.
Awesome. Lalika has a question for you. I'm gonna turn the time over to her.
Thanks. Yeah, so just kind of going off of what you're just sharing, Des, I felt like you were saying how, what are the things that, you know, other people that attract other people to your writing, because you have a relationship with all the poems. And I felt like I loved so many of your poems. I specifically wanted to point out the titles series, the 2018, 2019, 2020. And I thought that was super cool. Sorry, I thought I had a question, but maybe this is more a comment. But I just love that writing style, because, or that that technique you used in those three poems, because I felt like it was super intersectional. Like I wanted to figure out like where the theme was, but I just loved how like it was written out in a journal form, but also like titles, I was thinking, okay, where is she? Like, where's her head at? And this, so I just loved how like open and intersectional it was in those poems. So I guess my question would be like, did you write those titles during those years, or was that written type like where you kind of just reflected on, you know, those years back and were writing, and maybe some intentions behind that, because I thought those are really cool yeah, series.
I feel so seen. Yes. Wow. Those three in particular, I think there's a story attached to them, so I'm going to lean into that. When I was younger, wow. I journaled a lot. Like, and throughout middle school, I had a really intense relationship to journaling. I always like had my journal by my side, and it was a really like intimate thing that I developed. As I said, I've been writing forever. And then something happened with my mental health, and my mom decided to read my journal. And that was the biggest invasion of privacy and the most like invalidating thing as a youth to experience, because I was like, why don't you just ask? You know, like you could have just came to me and had a conversation. And also, like, I'm already struggling. Like, I'm not doing well. And for you to go and like take the only thing that I've been vulnerable with, and the only thing that I felt like I had to connect myself and ground myself in the earth still, was journaling and writing about it. And it's the only place where I could be honest and real. And after she read that, I didn't write. Because I felt so invaded. My privacy, my personhood, my emotions, my everything. Writing was everything to me when I was younger. And after that happened, I was very, very traumatized and upset and really resentful of somebody's ability to invade my space and my brain like that. And so I actually didn't write again until I moved out on my own when I was 18. As soon as I could, I got out of there. I was like, gotta go. Not very healthy environment for me as a queer person. And so, yeah, moving out on my own, I bought this journal, and I only get the same journal every single time. It's like a ceremony to me. Every single year at the start of the year, I buy a very specific brand of journal. And because it's durable, it's the best of like all the worlds. Like the cover doesn't wear or tear if you throw it in a bag. The pages are very like thick. I'm very particular about like writing materials. Yeah, exactly. Because I need something to just like be compatible with the frankly abuse that I put my journals through. Like it's rough. I take them in any sort of weather, but I needed something durable. And so in 2018, what is the first one? 2000? Yeah, I think it was 2018, not 2017, that I started writing again and rebuilt my relationship to it. And these, each poem is actually the title of every single entry of that year. Yeah, so each of these lines is a different story, a different moment, a different like experience that I had that I felt was worth writing about. And there's like a tonality to each of them. So like in 2018, there was a lot of grief, there was a lot of like transition, there was a lot of loss of like both myself and people that I really loved. There was like, I cut my hair off. I came out. Well, I was outed. I never came out, actually. Very important difference. I was outed and going through a lot of like, just a lot of young, queer, like religious parents stuff. And then like 2019, that was just a wild year. I feel like I was steady going through it for quite a while. But in 2019, I feel like that was the year that I began to actually lean into myself and like learn what love feels like for me, and also like lean into my mental health and really start to grapple with how it affects me and how it affects the people around me, and how I'm doing has such a deep and intimate impact on the people that I love. And really acknowledging that relationship to myself and others and leaning into that. 2020 was a mess for everybody in the world. Like collectively, 2020 was a mess. And I feel like individually, was a disaster. Between like the wildfires here in Portland, the pandemic, the like Black liberation uprising, like there was a lot going on politically, personally, like health wise. I worked in healthcare for the first the first 6 months of the pandemic. I worked in elderly care, and it was really, really difficult to see the impact that the pandemic had on these really important people to me, these elderly people, and then to deny them access to community and deny them access to family, and also like feed them like medicines and treatments, and like tell them that it was for their best interest. And at the core, like as Pasifika people, like community is everything, family is everything. And so 2020 for me felt like a year where my identity was challenged in ways that I never anticipated. But I realized that the more I worked in healthcare and the more that I had to tell these people that they didn't deserve community, that they couldn't have community, that I was a hypocrite. And that as much as like that's going to happen whether I'm there or not, I don't really feel comfortable or morally or ancestrally comfortable having that positionality, especially over my elders. That it was wild. It was very complicated and messy. And then here in Portland and in Cali, there was fires everywhere, and like potential evacuations. We were out protesting and getting like tear gassed, and 2020 was quite the year. I would definitely not do it again, but I'm also grateful for everything that it taught me. And so I think those three hold a lot more than they may appear to initially. And I appreciate that you noticed that. Thank you. They're meant to be very like, what does this mean? Like, I wish that they evoke some like, like, let's explore that. Because there's like 70 different stories woven into those three poems. Thank you for the question.
Des, we are coming towards the end of this beautiful meeting, but before we close, I want to open time for Kiana to ask our final question and then give you the opportunity to read a poem to us, if you would not mind. And then after you read the poem, we'll turn the time back to Kiana, who will close us up. So Kiana, your question.
Thanks, Pauline. And okay, Des, you've been talking a little bit about this. I'm Black and Chamorro, and I'm living in the Black diaspora, right? So I can kind of relate a little bit to, or I think I can relate a little to your experience there. So I'm wondering, as a mixed Palauan writer living in the diaspora, can you speak a little about any feelings of responsibility or ownership that you have when writing about your people? And I would just love to hear how your mixed identity bears on your writing in general.
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. This is beautiful and intense. Wow, yeah. Home. There's a lot of responsibility, a lot of confusion. Actually, I think I would name it confusion, because on one hand, I think like being Palauan, also just for some context, I'm Palauan, Mexican, and Italian. Interesting mix. I don't know how it happened, but it happened, and here I am. So I think, yeah, confusion is the word. Because when I think about home, I feel like I can be there. I've never been there. But if I close my eyes and I think about it, this question makes me emotional. Wow. If I think really hard about home, I'm there, right? And as a child of diaspora, I'm also very disconnected from home, and I grieve home without having known it. And I don't think that you have to know home to be home, and you don't have to know home to like love home, and you don't have to know home to love your people. And when I think about Palau in particular, I feel very heavy, knowing that like I'm a queer Palauan person, and to go home means to face my Republican elders. To go home means to face the realities of climate crises. To go home means to grieve everything that my ancestors have left for me. And it also means to find myself, and it means to finally feel like I'm not exploitive and on a land that like was also stolen from other people, you know, like I've never been able to settle into Portland, and I've never been proud to live in the United States because like this isn't my ancestral homeland. And it took the exploitation and like thievery both of like indigenous people and Black people to like get my body and my people here, and that never feels good. So I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of complexity in thinking about home and writing about it, and sometimes guilt to have such privilege and access to things like education, like higher ed. Like my people on Palau, we have like sustainability in school, and we have like degrees in conservation, and like they don't get the access to really dive into like emotional and social anything. I think that it's definitely a complicated privilege to have grown up here on these lands, and so distant from wherever home feels. And I think specifically as a mixed person, I feel like I don't fit anywhere, like I don't belong anywhere, because there's always this like pull between identities, and it's like, which one are you more of? And like, who, you know, who do you rep, who do you claim? And I think that specifically in America, like saying both is never an option. Everyone's always like, no, you have one or you have the other, or like, I'm going to perceive you this way and that is what I'm prescribing to you, and you don't get to break that box. And something that I've noticed also is that I've looked lately, okay, I've been on TikTok because what else are we supposed to do with our lives in this pandemic? And I've been looking on TikTok and seeing like a lot of people from other countries and the way that they interact with things like cultural appropriation, and how much kinder people are who grew up on their homelands. Like how much more access they give other people to their own culture and to their like values and their systems. And I think that that is birthed from a really deep insecurity that diasporic children have about not knowing home. And so we safeguard home like no one gets it, like that is ours and it's just ours and no one else has access to it, because I think in America we're so used to people extracting things from us and constantly like demanding things, and really enforcing like systems of capitalism and oppression, and instead of valuing like collective existence and community, there's such an emphasis on individuals. And so there's a lot of like scrutiny that's birthed from that. Sorry, I'm reading the chat. It is interesting. I think so too. I think it's fascinating and really devastating, because I look at other people and they're like, oh, go ahead, do that. Like, we want to share this with you. And I'm like, maybe we should keep it. Like, maybe we should just like put a box around it and call it ours. But I think that comes from insecurity, actually. And like, there are certain things that we should not appropriate, like absolutely, like we no AAVE here, like if you're not Black, none of that, no braids, like no. There are boundaries. There are definitely boundaries of like respect and culture. And there are a lot of complications about growing up diasporic and learning where to draw your boundaries and who is safe to draw boundaries with, and like who's reciprocal to them. Because, you know, here, like I expect retaliation immediately all the time. When I try to protect or defend or advocate for myself and my own needs, like the expectation is that there's going to be negativity and that there's going to be harm caused to me. And I think that going home wouldn't be much different, because I would be American if I went home, you know? I hope that makes sense. That was a long rant for a thank you so much for the question.
That was, That was a lot of good information right there. I'm so glad that we're recording this because I'm going to go back and re-listen to all the wonderful things you shared. Luciate, I know I said that was the last question, but did you have any remarks that I saw that you just turned on your camera. I didn't want to leave you out in the fun. If you wanted to jump in and add any type.
Oh, sure. Thanks. Thanks, Pauline. Hi, Des. Thanks so much for sharing. I can't imagine how, like, it's not how to share those intimate stories and stuff. I can imagine it can be a little bit nerve wracking. But I just want to know, like, if you had like an author or a poet that like you kind of look to as like not your North Star, but like something like where like you gained a lot from them or something, so an artist or a poet that's really influenced you. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for the question. Yeah, Kathy, my girl Kathy. We love Kathy here. That was actually the first Micronesian poet I ever read, and I was like, "There's Micronesian poets." Like it was wild to me. I was like, "Wow!" Like my people are out here in the poetry world. Given it was one person, and I was like, "Damn." It's just one other person that I really like feel, but that's enough for me, like I hope to be that one person for somebody. I mean, me and Kathy, so we can be the two people. But yes, I love Kathy. Kathy is amazing, beautiful, wonderful, and Kathy's child. Kathy's child is also wonderful and beautiful. And then outside of that, I think so Dane Smith, phenomenal poet. Queer Black man, very painfully real. Dante Collins, also queer and Black, phenomenal human being. Ebony Stewart, I know you said one or a few, but here I am just listing the people that I love. Ebony Stewart wrote a book called Homegirlhood, and it is the most encapsulated like truth of like a Black woman. And I think if that we're like as Pasifika people, as any people, if we're not engaging with like radical Black texts, then we're not really engaging in like decolonial practice or liberation. And so, yes, poetry by Black authors is definitely like a place to start and a place to sustain, because it teaches us like then about our own biases and experience and relationship to people. Yeah. Yes, Ocean Vuong, amazing, phenomenal. I have I'm looking over this way because there's a whole like library of poetry books just lined up. But yeah, all of those people, I can also send those through the chat or like through email or something, just so you have some like book recommendations for the future, because they're all phenomenal.
Thank you so much, Des.
Yeah, I was
sorry. Thanks for all the recs.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was gonna say that as a poet, I think or as a writer, we need to engage with other poets and styles of writing. It's very crucial in like learning your own style of writing to sit with others and understand how it's different and also how it's similar. All yours.
Definitely. Thank you for all the recs. One of my professors actually assigned us a reading from Ocean Vuong too. So I was just recently got introduced to Ocean Vuong, but I completely 100% agree with your last point about engaging with Black authors, Black poets, because when we see fully what they see, we can, like you said, we can see our own blind spots, and like, I just think we should follow Black leads. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and definitely. And I think that brings up, I won't talk much more, I swear. I also think that brings up a really like important conversation around anti-Blackness and white supremacy and colorism, specifically within the Pacific, and how in a lot of ways Pasifika people embody all three. And it's so fascinating and really intense and like interesting to dissect and like engage in dialogue around. So I would be down for a coffee time because we got a lot to talk about.
I said shower, but I meant to say hour, but we could shower and coffee and do whatever. I mean, people were getting tattoos on here. So it is like, we could do a lot of stuff on Pasifika Virtual Book Club. Okay, let me not continue to take up your Friday evening, Des, because I know the night is still young in Portland. And so will you top us off with a final poem, any poem that of your choosing, and then Kiana will just close us up.
Yes, of course. Do you have a preference, whether it's from the book or from the next?
I mean, if you want to drop a new poem, we wouldn't be opposed to it. It's been kind of our favorite thing when authors do that, where they give us something new that they're working on, and it's been so amazing. So I'm gonna let you choose, but I'm kind of leaning for the new stuff if you have anything for us.
Yeah, let me just pull it up. Okay. Yeah, this is a part of a collaborative poem actually that I wrote with my good friend Kevin Leongai Popo. I don't know if you know who that is, but also a poet, phenomenal human being, beautiful, wonderful. We did a collaboration for the Five Oaks Museum, the Indigenous Museum launch in Portland. And yeah, so we wrote 2 separate poems and then a third collaborative and combined them all together and performed them. It was really beautiful. But I'm gonna share my piece. It's called Holy Water. Yes, and a theme for all of my stuff is like religion and colonization and queer and all of those things. So that's what this is. I was 15 when Western Christianity promised me community, as if giving my life was the only redemption from my rebellion of existence and washing away my sins the only path to forgiveness. Risen to him, free of sin, I was made clean. It is 2014, and my home, my island frees me of my criminality, allowed to denounce the sin that they define as my sexuality, uncle. You cannot tell me that these things do not exist anymore when I feel it in the way that my aunties look at me when I speak. Their disappointment woven of American soil and defeat, as if our freedom wasn't something that colonization stole. And our home, not a morgue of drowned souls. I am the bones, uncle. I cannot go home. I don't belong in my skin anymore. It has been stolen, molded, exploited, and set in stone. I do not want your forgiveness if it means letting go of my truth, conforming and contorting myself into a mold of light, quiet, and skinny. Father, forgive me. Before baptism, my great-grandmother was the matriarch of our clan, and my grandfather an activist who fought alongside the Marshall Islands. I carry them on my back that has been beaten and stabbed for being tempted by the sun. Leaves, trees, and fruit, the smell of betel nut, trademarks of youth. I am free and fluid and one with the land, skin bruised by sun, hands rough like sand. I'm born again of water, ocean, and island. My existence is something that our ancestors mourn because I'm a compilation of their pre-colonial secrets. I exist like wind in the trees with a non-binary body and being that transcends everything that they prescribe for me. I am made of water, radical and radiant. I move throughout hues of blue and sun. I am neither, I am both, I am either, I am all. Uncle, we are one. Thank you. Thanks so much.